These are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome. I appreciate your taking time today to join us. We are Firestorm, and this is the second in our Crisis Coach 2018 webinar series. Today, we're going to be looking at predictive insights, looking for clues in advance of a crisis and during a crisis as well. As always, we invite you to connect with us via social media. You can find us on the web at firestorm.com, on Twitter at Firestorm Sol, on Facebook as Firestorm Solutions, on YouTube, and on LinkedIn. Please connect with us, and if you're on social media, use the hashtag CrisisCoach, and we'll get back in touch with you as quickly as possible. As always, our attorneys would like us to inform you that this exercise is not complete without the accompanying oral comments and discussion, and any work product provided by Firestorm should be read in conjunction with all guidance given by national, regional, and local authorities, as well as your organization's personal counsel. Moreover, the information given and comments made in this webinar should not be interpreted as legal advice or legal opinion. As you know, Firestorm transforms crisis into value and empowers you to manage crisis and risk. Our expertise is not limited to, but does include crisis management, critical decision support, crisis communications, crisis public relations, and consequence management. I'd like to thank our underwriters for today's session, and that is the Virginia Association of Independent Schools. We have a couple of guests on. One is our Firestorm representative in the Virginia and Maryland area, and the other is the wonderful Kim Fallion from the Virginia Association of Independent Schools. Kim, would you like to say something? And then Ryan. We have Ryan instead of Ken, so Kim, if you'd like to say something, and then Ryan.
Absolutely. Thanks, Karen. We've said it before and we'll say it again. We really relish the rich connection with Firestorm. These monthly webinars are really helpful to our folks, and as well the many services you offer beyond. So we look forward to the continued relationship with Firestorm, and I'm very happy to be here today.
Thank you so much. And Ryan?
Yeah, Kim, well, thank you. You know, it has been quite a journey, hasn't it? I think we're coming up on 3 years, 2.5 years, something like that. So for you know, the schools that this is their first time experiencing one of our presentations, or for those of you who have experienced many, we're very thankful for your participation, and we really do care about the success of your school and your community and helping you navigate these complex issues of preparedness. We're here to assist you through the process. So thank you again.
Thank you so much, Ryan, pretending to be Ken, pretending to be Ryan. We appreciate that. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us at webinars@firestorm.com, but also to R. Mercer, M-E-R-C-E-R, at firestorm.com, or Ken Mercer, K. Mercer, at firestorm.com. Thank you so much, and again, thank you to the Virginia Association of Independent Schools. We're going to do a little bit of a different approach to today's session. I hope we'll make it fun for you, slightly interactive as best we can on a webinar. And I also wanted to recap with you some of the questions we asked you when you first registered for the session. What we're talking about today is predictive intelligence, and we've seen the word predictive intelligence used in a number of ways over the past few years. It is the analysis of big data, multiple data points, in order to create really an individualized customer experience. It was used by marketing. And a few years back in 2012, Jim Satterfield and I started using that data to look at behaviors of concern. And so we look at monitoring or predictive intelligence or protective intelligence in a couple of different ways, from both a marketing point of view and also from a anticipatory behavioral risk point of view. So the first thing we asked you when you registered was, whose responsibility is it to monitor? And it's an interesting question because the idea that marketing and human resources share this responsibility is not uncommon. It lives in marketing. But I want to tell you something. If in your school, or for those of you who are not school organizations, but other types of organizations on the call today, remember that marketers are trained to respond differently than those who may be trained in behavioral risk. Marketers are trained to engage. And in cases of behavioral risk, engagement may not be appropriate or called for. Our human resource folks may be looking at it through a completely different lens. And what is challenging is, do you have a central way for these groups to speak to each other, so when they're observing the same things, they're communicating about not only their activities, but what activities may go on in the future? Only 10% of the people feel it should live in the security world or the security side of your business. 20% think, I don't know really where it goes, over there on the other side somewhere, and 30% just weren't sure at all, which really, when you combine that with other, it makes 50%. And so we really see that we have some education in our own organizations, on our own desks, as to how does this roll out and
Karen, I think we've lost your telephone. Karen? Please bear with us. We're trying to reconnect with Karen. Thank you for your patience. Trying to get Karen back on.
Hello, folks. I'm back.
There she is. Good. Thank you, Karen.
I apologize. I had a temporary issue, and we're just going to take that phone and throw it out the window, and hopefully that will never happen again. Appreciate your patience. So the next thing we're going to talk about then is, we also asked you if your organization used analytical tools, what you use them for. And I was impressed that 30% of you responded that you are using analytical tools for threat identification. 20% said you're not only using it for threat identification, but that combination of marketing and threat identification. 40% of you just aren't sure, and 10% of you say we're not using them for either issue. So I think this is giving us good insight into the fact that this is still a bit of a blurry area for folks, especially if you're in a smaller organization where bandwidth is challenging. The perception that this takes an enormous amount of time or it's really complex is somewhat partially accurate. It does take time to be invested in the oversight of behavioral risks. But once you map it out, once you combine it with what your responses will be in case there ever is an incident, it actually can be incorporated very well into your organization. I want you to know that, A, that's a terrible picture of me, and I'm going to throw it away. But next, predictive analytics, just so that we understand what we're talking about, again, is the use of data, and it's statistical algorithms and machine learning that is used to identify future outcomes based upon this historical data. And this is, again, been traditionally used, or over the past 15 years or so, to understand buying patterns of people. It's why when you go on Facebook or when you go to whatever your favorite news site is, those ads are served up on the right-hand side, because there is data being compiled, if you allow it to do so, in the background. So it originates in marketing. It's the method of analyzing that data, and it becomes unique to a particular individual or customer experience. So why wouldn't we use that to apply it to our own organizations in order to keep the people and property in our purview safer and more secure? And that's really our bottom line goal. I want to talk to you then a little bit about how Firestorm is going to cover all aspects of the services that you may need going forward into 2018. As Jim mentioned, if you were on our session last month, we've been very excited. We have a couple of new companies that we've brought under the fold at Firestorm. And starting with our crisis and risk solutions, we are, as we always have been, your crisis coach, and move into people solutions now. We have the ability now to recruit people for you who are experts in security and business continuity in these fields. Our security solutions are now have extended into a broad category, from construction and threat analysis to active shooter training. But more important, I bring this up because we have a group now of former Secret Service agents, and they are trained as no others in intelligence solutions, which is this: predictive, protective analytics. So in addition to bringing professional services, our plans and assessments, our diagnostic tools such as benchmarking and metrics, we are combining our already robust predictive intelligence practice with former Secret Service people who train others internationally on how to spot behaviors of concern. So we are so excited because we're going to be able to bring you the power that we had before in the tools, and now we have the expertise. And I hope you can hear the excitement in my voice. And in my cough. My apologies. I got so excited I couldn't talk. Okay, I want to tell you a little bit about what we've done since 2012. This number is really much higher, but we've monitored steadily, either in a retained agreement or some other agreement, more than 60 schools, and that includes districts as well. So that number is higher, but we have long-term relationships in excess of 4 years with individuals, private schools, public schools, secular organizations, churches, and camps to help them through monitoring of social, traditional, and new media, understanding behaviors of concern or threats as they arise. You know, every day we read in the news where there has been an incident of potential violence or violence in a school or an organization. What I'd love for you to do when this session is over is Google, or whatever your search engine of choice is, the term plot thwarted, or teacher or school official stops plot. And what you'll see is that every day there is a growing number of schools that are interceding earlier so that we don't see an incident of violence occur. It's fantastic. The efforts that organizations are putting into understanding not only how to respond in an active situation, but what to do beforehand to keep that from escalating is really encouraging. And so we are very encouraged that we can assist in that regard by putting predictive intelligence in place so you see it coming. We have more than hundreds of monitoring engagements and crisis stop responses for our businesses, schools, and camps. We've delivered more than 3,800 hours of both face-to-face and webinar training, and we have covered much more than 100,000 students through a combination of our Geo-fence monitoring and oversight and keyword monitoring and oversight. We're going to look at that in just a second. So let's talk about what that service is. When it comes to intelligence solutions, what we're doing is we're combining leading intelligence tools with, as I mentioned, seasoned practitioners, former Secret Service personnel who are experts at understanding and analyzing data for its context and its regional colloquialisms, the language of what's being said on new social and traditional media. And we then utilize threat assessment criteria to determine the potential threat. And we help you understand what you're seeing and what next steps should be taken. And we do this in support of whatever your internal program is, and we'd love to talk to you about our behavioral risk threat assessment or BERTHA program. You can find more information out about that on our website. But through that, we're going to create a risk profile if we see an issue. We're going to implement threat assessments, and then what are the escalation protocols that go along with that. In our intelligence solutions, we take a very simple format. The first thing we do is sit down with you and encourage you to understand what your risk profile is. So it is an assessment specifically with regard to how we will look at data and what will we look at to determine what a risk is. Are we looking for specific words that have to do with weapons? If your football team is called something that may influence the type of risk profile we're creating because of their name or because of a cheer, we want to make sure that we exclude those terms when we're creating your risk profile or take into consideration that those terms may bubble up. There may be a starting gun for your track team if you have a really big track team. So we need to understand that in this context, right? Next, once we create your risk profile that's unique to your region, your students, your educators, your staff, and your community, we then give it that contextual analysis, so that, again, we understand what kind of conversation may be occurring in your region, in your area. We also understand that if drugs are a concern for you, that the name for a specific type of drug in, let's say, West Virginia may be different from the name of a specific type of drug in Maryland or in Virginia. And we understand those nuances of language. Then we have to sit down and we do a threat alert workflow design. And this is important. If you identify a threat today, who do you tell? Who do you talk to? Right now, this moment, if you got a text alert that said someone just posted something about us on social media that's a threat, what do? Do you just automatically issue a warning of some type, or do you look into it, or do you have someone who looks into it? What's your protocol? Who is alerted, and how will you roll that protocol in to this type of a solution if you don't have the type of a solution in place already, because the biggest breakdown happens through communication, right? And then we observe and report. We let whatever our search term, string, Geo-fence, we live with it and we watch and we observe and we adjust. And we learn about you, your environment, your school, your business, your organization. And once we have put these pieces together, we can then sit down with you and say, here's what we learned. We're going to do a hot wash of a specific event or of a specific period of monitoring, and we're all going to help improve what the next steps are for the next event. Now, let me tell you a little bit about how we do that. And then what I'd like to do is take you on a little mini exercise. So we're going to do a little mini case study today. I'm going to encourage you to communicate back to us. You can use the GoToWebinar chat feature on the little toolbar that should be somewhere on the right side of your screen. And if you have any questions, our moderator, Bill Baker, will feed those questions, concerns, or observations to me as we move forward. The first thing that we do, if we were working with your organization, is we have a couple of different tools that we use in combination with those highly trained practitioners we discussed. And we can bring in and feed in a tremendous amount of data from different data points. We can do everything from an RSS feed of a news website or a Yelp review site to broad web searches that include some of the places on the web that you might not monitor as a course of your daily review of social mentioning. Things like 4chan, 9chan, those types of websites that are a little odder, a little darker, and not part of your regular day. Even things like Tumblr, blogs, Instagram, Facebook, of course, Twitter, and other websites, Kik, Yik Yak, things like that. So what we do then is craft keyword and key phrase analyses, and we take about 300 characters or 2 to 3 keyword phrases. We put them together and we throw out a broad net and say, okay, look for this stuff, but don't bring me back results that include, I used my knife to cut my meat. So we have to put the conversation in context, or we may look at all of those pieces and then filter those out for you, for your view. It depends on how we're going to be working together. We then create a logical workflow, and we include the people in your organization in that workflow who need to know. So if we are monitoring for you and receiving instantaneous alerts, who else would you like to receive those alerts? And do different types of alerts go to different people? Something that we do quite often that is interesting, especially when there's a rivalry for major sports events. And we have picked up some chatter about potential violence or fighting that may go on at those events. We can then look at the event on the night of the event and keep you up to date and alert if we see people in a specific area talking about specific actions that they might take. It can be really helpful in that regard. It can be helpful in all regards, but that's a good one. We also have the ability, we call it an agency model, and that's where we bring you into your own specific dashboard and console so that you can use the application with us to monitor threats, but you can also use it to market. You can use it to oversee potential business development opportunities for your school or your organization, and you can message out. And we tell you and have told you for years and years, let's do message maps together, right? Let's prepare in case there's a weather event. If we have hurricane that goes all the way up the East Coast. Wouldn't it be great to have one application with messages ready that you can just push the button and message out? And we can do that, help you through this so that you can message out to Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram in an almost simultaneous manner. And then we can extensively source where this data is coming from. We have thousands of data points that we can use, and we can, through that RSS feed customization I mentioned, bring in thousands of news sites, posts, etc. But because of our ability to analyze, to measure the types of conversations that are occurring, especially once we get to know you and your organization, we can filter out the noise for you and feed you a great dashboard and great information. We have a separate tool then we combine that with, and that separate tool allows us to create a geo-fence around your school or your organization that is been specifically designed for intelligence professionals to use. The tool allows for a deeper dive when additional publicly sourced intelligence is required. And not only can we do keyword and key phrase analysis, we'll also search on emojis. So that knife that was being used to cut the meat, we can, if somebody uses the knife emoji, we'll also pick that up. We can do custom queries and a social graph design, and this is an interesting feature. If we have a post by someone who is anonymous, by doing something called a social graph, we can almost get a really good feel for geographically where that person might be located, even if their geolocation services are not turned on. Now, the instance of geolocation services being turned on goes in waves. For a while, everybody had it defaulted to on, and we were picking up 90% of conversations. Then everybody turned it off, and now everybody's turning it back on again because so many apps that they're using rely on geolocation, like Lyft or Uber or Waze. So we're seeing more and more information bubbling up just from that geofencing location. Now, a geofence looks for messaging from a very specific area, and we're going to look at an example of that in just a moment. The deep people search is a very interesting area, and I want you to understand that all of this is publicly aggregated information. We're not looking at any information that is private or secured. We're looking only at that information that is publicly shared or posted. And one of those pieces of information that we are able to look at is using only a small snippet of data. Someone's email address, someone's phone number without an email address, someone's physical address without an email or a phone. We're able to surface some very specific public information that can be very helpful in taking next steps in an investigation, especially if there's a viable threat that's been identified. We have used this tool many times when we have had challenges or issues of stalking or other threats made to individuals, public officials, senior leaders, and senior heads of school. When I talk about that geofence, the next image you should be seeing is what that geofence looks like. And in this situation, it is been designed specifically for a football game. We were monitoring that gray area that you see is actually the football field and the school. And those were all of the messages that were coming out during that football game. They were a combination of Instagram and Twitter. And it's really fascinating when you start seeing all of those messages start bubbling up over a very specific period of time. And then we're able to look at those via this visual representation or as a list, content list, so that we can see specific words or threatening behavior that may be ongoing. Now, we're going to do a very simple little exercise here today. We've got about 15 minutes. And I'd like to walk through what might happen if something occurred in your organization today. So let's take a minute. If you're sitting with your team, somebody take some notes. And we're going to do this little mini exercise just so that we can test and see how well we're responding today to a threat. And then let's make a decision for 2018 to move forward in a logical way in order to keep our students and our staff and our community safer. So let's assume you're an accredited private school with about 550 students. If you're on the call today and you are not a school but another type of organization, please adapt this for your own situation. Let's say your classes range the gamut from PK through high school and you're a co-ed organization. Base your responses to me or to your team there upon whether you have some sort of regular monitoring set up to assist you in marketing efforts or in efforts to identify behaviors of concern. And let's assume it's nearing the end of your school day or your middle of your workday, late afternoon workday, about 2:10 in the afternoon. You're alerted to a Twitter post that surfaces with the popular hashtag #MeToo, plus your school's name. That's all you know. Your school's name and that hashtag are appearing together. Suddenly, numerous posts with your school's name and that #MeToo hashtag begin to surface. One of the benefits of one of the applications that we use is that it will tell me, it will give me a baseline and say, you know, normally this school or this organization receives about 60 mentions a week or 60 mentions a day. If suddenly there is a spike, I receive something, and so do you, called a burst alert. And it tells us, whoa, you normally receive 60 mentions a week, you just received 500 in an hour. We think you need to look at this immediately. So it alerts us as to something odd is going on. Suddenly, all of these posts begin to surface. And by clicking through into the original post, you see that the account where this originates is anonymous. You can't identify who the person is. Their name on their account is Random Girl. And the post reads, "Me Too" by a teacher at whatever the name of your organization or school is. If you're an organization, think about this as if it were an employee, an anonymous employee talking about someone within your organization and asking for help. No one will help me. We also see from this message that it has 250 comments back and forth. It's had 146 reshares, and 112 people have favorited it. That is very hard for me to say. So we have a situation. What do you do next? Everyone on this call, what is the first thing you do when you see this? Who do you call? Who do you talk to? And what is your role in that conversation? Who are you going to inform? Are you going to inform all of your team, all of your staff? Is everyone on high alert? Are you going to tell anyone? Are you going to investigate further? Are you going to call us? What are the next steps in monitoring? How do you go about looking for this? Are you just going to type "Me Too" in a random search? That's going to give you millions of responses. Are you going to type only your school name in? Is that going to give you the kind of information that you need? Should we type in this exact language, or maybe just part of it, by a teacher in Virginia? Maybe that will help. How do we know? Have we practiced this? Have we done it before? How do we know how many people have seen this message and are discussing it? Well, we know there are 250 comments and 146 reshares and 112 favorites. But something else that we have the potential to do with the right tools is to look at potential reach. And potential reach is created through an algorithm of understanding how many eyes potentially have interacted with a specific message and the reach of those accounts. We had a situation in the past where we had a school that experienced an instance of racism outside of its own school grounds against its students. And while the situation was unfolding in the courts and in the local government, a very famous comedian with more than 1 million followers reshared an article that was written in a small local paper. And suddenly, what was a relatively contained situation became a story on the national news scene. How do you know when that happens and how many eyes are potentially on your situation? And you can do that through the right tools and approaches. How are you going to identify who this person is who has asked for help? How do we know it's real? And if it is real, how do we help the person who is crying for help? Remember, when we're using the tools that we've mentioned, we can do an awful lot by crafting the right phrases in the right ways. So we can take this exact phrase. We can also take the hashtag for our made-up school, St. Justice, and combine it with regional searches, the exact language being used, and looking at the comments from the account, take the exact language from those comments and start to really dig through the social graph of all of the people that are discussing this. Because what's important is that we understand if not only our organization being named, but people within our organization, and what is the reach of that. If it's bubbled up to you, who else has it bubbled up to? Meanwhile, you still have actions to take. You still have messages to issue because your community will. A parent has seen this message on Twitter and they are sharing it on their Facebook account. And this particular parent, who's already had some challenges with communication with the school, is railing against the school. They are immediately saying that there is a problem, and they are getting other people to have a conversation about this problem on Facebook. You have a part-time person who manages your school's Facebook account. They normally message about football games and upcoming events and neat awards that you've won. They don't know what to do because this parent thread has now spread over into your Facebook page where you're allowing posting on the page. So now when people go to your Facebook page, there's a conversation about abuse ongoing. And your part-time person doesn't know what to do, so they respond. And they engage with the Facebook community in a way that rather than changes the situation, inflames the situation because we have no facts or information. It's the wrong time to engage. You suddenly receive simultaneous panicked phone calls from that part-time employee who says, oh my God, I'm not sure what I did, if I did the right thing, but I've just been messaging with these people and they're really angry. You get another call from 3 different parents who are saying, what is going on? I'm pulling my kid out of there. And the director of your private school's religious services calls and says, what is going on over there? I have parishioners or church community members that are showing up and asking me to intercede. All of this has happened within about a 15-minute period in your life. What are you doing? Who are you coordinating with? How are you communicating? Let me ask you the most important question. Are you in control? You know, one of the key points of a crisis, points wasn't the right word, but I lost the word, is loss of command and control. On a normal basis, you know what's going on. You're walking down the halls. You know when a bell rings what happens. But suddenly you're out of control because other people have taken control of your situation. Do you have a team that's trained and at the ready to assist you when suddenly things get out of control? Because they will. That is the nature of a crisis. Do you have communication pre-prepared for this? Do you have people at the ready to investigate what's going on? And most importantly, do you have a way you can identify this alleged victim and help them if they need help in whatever way? There are two things here. It could be completely random, just someone who decides that your school or your organization or your church or your camp or your business is going to be their victim today. You have someone who validly has had a situation occur. You have someone who believes a situation has occurred, or any of a number of data points in between. And you just don't have enough information right now to make those determinations. So how are you going to make those determinations? By leveraging some of the tools that we've discussed, we can help move that forward. Many of you on the call may recall a conversation that we've had a few years back. I think it's been about 3 years now, where we identified someone was bringing a weapon to school. And we were able, even though it was an anonymous account, we were able to look at their social graph, their social circle, and put them within a mile of a school that we determined to be the school they were discussing. We weren't sure. And we were able to reach out to that school, and we confirmed it was indeed that school. So we can really help move this forward and at least give you a geographic pinpoint of where we believe the person to be. Using other small points of data, we may be able to surface other information that can help you move that conversation forward. Now, think about this, and I'd love for you to take this. There'll be a brief of this session later, and I've also attached to the GoToWebinar toolbar a download of a couple of pieces of predictive intel information. But I'd love for you to sit with your team and walk through the next step of this crisis. What if a specific teacher is named in a social media post that has nothing to do with this but somehow becomes connected? Or maybe they do have something to do with it. What are you going to do then? And that teacher is in the school teaching at the moment and has no idea this is ongoing. What if a message surfaces that there are alleged images floating around on private apps like Snapchat and others, and that parents are organizing to go to this named teacher's home and demand they resign? One parent in particular starts copying a local news station on all activity, and I watched this happen last year toward the end of the year with a school, where one parent just started copying everyone, from Fox News to CNBC to their local news station. And suddenly, our client was receiving a call from the local news station requesting comment because they planned to air the story at 6. Now you've got 20 minutes in your life where all chaos has broken out. How are you going to respond now? Do you have a team trained to assist you? Everyone on this call has access to something called Crisis Stop. It is a program that is no fee to you. Mention you're on this or any call for the Virginia Association of Independent Schools, and you will be able to speak to one of our senior principals for 1 hour about whatever your evolving crisis is, because we need to help you stop and determine your next steps, because all information generally that you receive at the beginning of a crisis is wrong. Data is not available for you to analyze. You don't have policies in place. You have lost command and control completely. Your brand and reputation are under attack. Your leadership, you are involved. You're personally engaged in trying to manage this process. The impacts are disproportionate to what is going on. The events are escalating and spinning out of control, and your speed in responding can mean the very survival of your organization, and you become the center of media focus. Are you trained for that? Your intelligence network suddenly becomes critical to the decisions that you make. What we'd like to be able to do is help you understand when a situation occurs, whether you're in a guarded mode, an elevated mode, whether there is a crisis that is imminent, or whether you're in the middle of a crisis and it's severe right now, and what specific actions, communications, and steps you need to take. The only way you can do that is with some sort of an intelligence program. And again, you have access to our Crisis Stop program. You can contact us at firestorm.com. You can call us at our 1-800 number on our website, and you will most likely speak to our moderator on today's call, Bill Baker. And Bill will then escalate your call to a senior principal to help you through the first moments of a crisis. What I'd like you to take away from this today is that monitoring tools are integral to your strategy, but their effectiveness is tied to the human beings who are charged with the use of the tools. You may have tools that are sitting gathering dust in your garage, right? Well, the same thing happens with the tools you put in place and think you're going to be using all the time, but you forget they're even there. We need to understand what we're monitoring and why, and have a comprehensive program in place that we improve as we go forward. We need to designate our teams that are in charge of response. We need to document and train on all action steps, and then be ready to implement immediately when a crisis does occur. We're still going to lose command and control a little bit in a crisis, but the impacts are not going to be so great because we've got some pieces and parts in place. Without plans and procedures in place, again, you've just got tools that are gathering dust. So what's next? Download a brief of today's session. It'll be up on our website sometime early next week. Download the accompanying documents in the right-hand toolbar of your GoToWebinar dashboard or toolbar. I've got 2 documents there for you. Contact us at firestorm@webinars.com, and we can explain our Crisis Stop program to you. You can also reach me personally at Masullo@firestorm.com. Register for next month's session at firestorm.com events, and don't forget to sign up for our newsletter if you're not receiving our newsletter. And remember that we can help you identify and connect the dots through predictive open source intelligence design and help you remain in command and control of your next crisis. Please take this information and use it with your own teams. I want to thank the Virginia Association of Independent Schools for being with us today. Thank you, Ryan Mercer. I'm sorry I went a little bit off time. Losing my phone there for a second caused me to lose some time. But don't hesitate to reach out to us if you would like a document or a session like this for your team at webinars@firestorm.com. For your Crisis Stop program, dial 1-800-321-2219 and let us know that you're part of the Virginia Association of Independent Schools session, and we will make sure that if you're in a crisis, we're there to assist. I want to thank everyone today for joining us, and that will end our session for today. Have a wonderful day, and goodbye.